Hi, everyone. Welcome to our usual Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Nora Kyle.
And I'm one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali, but you're going to have to guess which one of us is which.
Oh my gosh. All right. So thank you for being here. Our YouTube spiel. Like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. We really appreciate when people interact with us on our platform here or on Facebook in our Facebook forum. You can join that. There will be a link in the comments, not in the comments, the description. So you'll find that there. We still have a few weeks left in our retreat sign up. Our original deadline has been, I think, March 12th, and we are extending it to the 26th. So there's still an opportunity to sign up and submit payment and such. We are going to be spending 5 days together in southern Sweden and having a great time together at our first in-person retreat for the Nine-Sided Circle. So we hope you'll consider joining us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anything else I need to add, Mushtaq?
We can add, welcome, Steve, to we have
Hi,
not met.
Steve. Yes.
And I'm digging your background.
Very cool.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Good evening from New Hampshire. It's actually 9:46 here, so thank you very much for allowing me to be part of the
Madhouse.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So you slip it in right
Thank
under
you.
the line, and it's
Yeah.
good to have you. Yeah. All right. So I think that's it. Right?
Yeah, what are we doing?
Okay, so this evening we are following up on a question, or at least, some focus on a topic we have not really given specific attention to. And this is the subject of Fana, or annihilation. And we're going to be discussing it from a couple different perspectives on what it means, what it entails, the kinds of philosophies that underpin it. And this is going to have a little bit of geographical context as well that
Yeah.
I think we're going to touch
And we're
on.
going to relate it all the way back to Mr. Gurdjieff and his strange ways of doing things.
Yes. So this is an Arabic term, right?
Yes.
And it has a long tradition of being part of the canon, I guess we could say, of Sufi philosophy and practice. So we'll be coming at it from a couple of different, not just points of view in terms of who's talking about it, but also how does it relate to one's practice, one's experience of one's, the work, quote unquote. So let's get started. Where do we want to begin?
Let's start with talking about what many people understand when somebody says Fana, the stages of Fana, stages of annihilation of the ego. In most of the Islamic world, this is understood to have 4 steps. And those steps are Fana fi Sheikh, Fana fi Pir, Fana fi Rasul, and Fana fillah. This, how do I describe this? So you go in, you become a Sufi. Wham, you're a Sufi. And your sheikh says to you, okay, you need to do this thing. You need to keep me in your heart at all times. This is a process called rabita. And in every moment, imagine that I'm with you and imagine that I'm guiding you. And listen to my guidance as if it were coming from the divine. And you work on that really, really hard. You visualize your teacher in front of you at all times. And eventually, if you get good enough, he'll say, okay, now I want you to do this with the pir of our order. So if you're Qadiri, you're going to do it with Abdul Qadir Jilani. If you're Rifai, you're going to do it with Ahmed Rifai. If you're Mevlevi, you're going to do it with Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi. You're just going to like do the same thing, make rabita with them, try and make connection through the heart, and try and lose yourself in them. And if you get past that, then you're going to do the same thing with the Prophet Muhammad. You are going to just keep the Prophet in your mind and in your heart and make connection at every moment. And eventually you'll get to do that with God himself, Fana fillah, where your ego is dissolved in the divine presence. This is the way that I would say the majority of Sufi orders talk today that you should do. We, on the other hand, totally reject that. And we have an entirely different process that was handed down from our peers. And it is totally different. It has nothing to do with losing yourself in the personality of another. Questions so far? I mean, I'm going through this very quick because I don't want to take 5 hours to do this. We're all good?
Rein it in a little bit tonight, yeah.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean questions are not welcome. Yes.
Yeah.
Kitav.
That'll be very helpful. There's the names of the 4 stages.
Can barely hear you, Katav.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're
Oh,
like
I'm sorry. If you could one of us type the names of the 4 stages.
Still can't hear you.
Okay, thank you.
If you'd like to, yeah, please type 4 stages in the chat. Yes, I did that actually. You may see it above. I did not define them because we did that verbally. But you'll see it's the message just above yours, Kitav.
Yeah, we can do it again if we need to.
Got it. No, he has it. It's fine. Okay, good.
So the way we do it uses 4 steps as well. Totally different steps, though. The first step is called Fanaa Ahkam. AHKAM in English. And that word means like ordinances, judgments, authorities. This is the rules. And living your life mechanically along with whatever rules your society has given you. Now, having that become a state of annihilation does not mean that you lose all inhibitions, but it means that you lose the mechanical demand of those rules. So if you choose to act in a particular way, it's not society forcing it on you. And it is your own inner understanding of ethics and morality. And this is analogous to Gurdjieff's man number 4. To move into this is to move into a set of rules and laws that is much less restrictive that one usually lives under if one is stuck in the mechanical world. Now, the second Fana is it's called Fana I Afal. Afal means acts, deeds, how one conducts oneself, one's actions, one's being in the world. And whereas the first has to do with a disillusionment with the world of mechanical human beings. The second has to do with a disillusion and a stepping away from one's inner life as equally mechanical. And so when one is firmly in this state of Fana, one is no longer, one's acts and deeds are no longer mechanically defined. They become spontaneous. They become acts of will rather than reactions from mechanical nature. This is where, when Gurdjieff talks about man is asleep and he has no eye and can do nothing until he wakes up, this is that state. Fana I afal is the state where you start waking up from your own mechanical nature, which is internal, not external.
So that's kind of like when you start realizing you spend a lot of your time dreaming, right?
Yes.
Quote unquote dreaming, getting lost in the stories you tell yourself about your life, your fantasies, your daydreams, your worries, stresses, all of that stuff, right?
The third stage, according to Assens, and by the way, that last one was man number 5, according to Gurdjieff. When Gurdjieff describes man number 5, that's what he's talking about. This is where you have actually created a non-mechanical I, one hopes. And it's a dangerous place because you can either crystallize this correctly or incorrectly, depending on what you've done at man number 4, at the first Fanaa.
And we've discussed some,
Yeah,
definitely some of that
we have
stuff.
talked through this as at length in various places, and we will talk through it again so y'all know what we're talking about.
Mhm.
So the third, which would be man number 6, according to Gurdjieff, is called Fana Sifat. Sifat basically means, it's got a lot of different meanings, but we take it to mean the attributes, the annihilation of egoic attributes. So to understand this, you have to understand a little bit about the 99 names, each of which look at an attribute of the divine reality. So just as God has attributes, humans have attributes. Our attributes tend to be very, very mechanical. So we annihilate, we give up our mechanical attributes and exchange them for awakened attributes. And this is a very high, very powerful state. When you move through this, you are, how would I describe it? You're basically exchanging your ego for God's ego, so that the attributes through which you operate on the world are pure and awake. And then we get to the last of these, which is Fana Idat or Izat, depending on your dialect. And that means essence. The annihilation of essence is like the annihilation of the attributes, only you are giving up the mechanical essence, the mechanically built illusionary essence for something that is more real.
So
Or
in
the
each
what?
of these steps, that's
Yeah.
kind of key, right? That you're trading one for something different.
Yes.
Like your own for something greater than that. Yeah.
So that's what we think the path of Fana should look like. And we have no problem with other people doing the other one, perfectly fine with it. It's been around for centuries. A lot of people get a lot out of it. Great. We just don't go in that direction. So, questions so far? Jonathan, I hear you thinking.
Yeah, do you have any sense of how many people on the planet would be man number 5 or 6 or 7?
Not only do
Or-
I not have any sense, but I don't give a damn. There could be hundreds, there could be thousands, there could be tens. It's all the same. The only thing I care about is, can I get to that place and hold it?
But if there were only 2 or 3 who are at 7, let's say, doesn't that make you quake at the enormity of the task?
No,
It could, couldn't it? But
I suppose it could, but why should I care? If you are the most enlightened Buddha on the planet, and you may very well be, how does that have anything to do with me? Your enlightenment does not change mine, even by a small bit.
why do you ask, Jonathan?
Yeah, tell us.
Wouldn't it be a progressively alone and lonely state
It very
the
well
further
could be.
you go along the path?
Yeah. But at the same time, one's attitude shifts as they develop, so that the focus is less on, you know, what is everybody else up to?
And one might give up the company of robots, but one acquires the company of the divine reality. You don't really do that because it's not two. But it can be said to be like that.
I see that Steve has his hand up, and I want to just acknowledge.
Yes, Steve, please.
But I also wonder if Mustaqim has a thought that's directly related to Jonathan. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think so. We'll see. Can I ask?
Go ahead, Mustaqim.
Yeah, I think I have two questions. The first, is there any way to know if we are in any state of this Fana? And
Probably, yeah.
or like if for example I work to get to man number 7 or the final state of Fana, how do I know my progress, or is it important to know a progress, or just don't care about that where
I like
one
the
is?
idea of not caring about your progress at all. Because I find, at least for me, that always got in my way.
Yeah.
I go, have I gotten that far yet? Am I like higher than this dude over here? How about my friend there? Could I be at a higher state than him? And you have to remember that there's a difference between a state and a station, right? Anybody can be in a state of Fana at any time, but it's to hold the station of Fana that we look for. It's not the hal, it's the maqam. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll ask my next question later. I just need my words.
Think about it. All right. Steve,
Yeah,
tell us
sorry
things.
about that. Thanks for waiting. There you go.
Again, thank you everyone for your kindness and allowing me to be here. It's a pleasure to be here.
great to have you.
So, what's interesting is that I've done my own sadhana insofar as Tibetan Buddhist meditation is concerned, both Dzogchen and Mahamudra, to give you some history as to where I'm coming from. And also, I'm aware of Rosicrucian orders. That's where this thing behind me comes from. It's from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, actually. I think it comes from their second tier Rosicrucian or
Yeah, I thought I recognized it.
in order. So the interesting thing about the work, as Gurdjieff mentioned it, is to a very large degree, I was mentioning this earlier to someone, that it seems to be, I had an overwhelming sense of despair come upon me because I sat there and I thought, how many people are actually aware of what they're aware of? And how aware are they of what they are not aware of? A lot of groups and esoteric orders and clandestine orders, or whatever you want to call these orders, there are various tiers of orders, I suppose, top down, down up, non-hierarchical, whatever. It seems to me that they're either interested in the acquisition of cities or occult powers, or they're concerned about magical apprehension of things, whether it's by planetary forces like this behind me. I just like this image back here. I'm not an esoteric or occult fanatic that's trying to gain all powers and all control over people and become a black magician or whatever the case might be. But again, it seems to me that these orders are either concerned about external power in one form or another, and control or control. I don't equate the two as being necessarily the same. But the internal work of changing oneself and being aware seems to me to be a very alone thing. Krishnamurti, a gentleman maybe some of you have heard about, Jiddu Krishnamurti, talked about the difference between being alone and lonely. He said that lonely is when we're self-focused. Woe is me, 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 me. And whereas being alone, he said, is to understand what it is to be aware of what one is aware of and what one is not aware of, and to be consciously choosing this. So that's what I can give insofar as a quote is concerned. But is the nine-sided circle here? Are you folks coming at things from a Sufi-based apprehension, which is from where I believe that Mr. Gurdjieff got his works from, is the work from, or are you approaching things from a Gurdjieffian, for lack of a better term, apprehension? Thanks.
Okay. To answer your question, we are doing to Mr. Gurdjieff what he did to us, which is we're stealing a bunch of his language because it is more comprehensible to modern Western people than if we used all Sufi terms, which are mostly in Arabic, Farsi, or Turkish, which while around here, there are some people who speak those languages, most of our audience doesn't. So what we are is a Sufi group. We are an uncommon Sufi group in some ways. And we're interested in one thing. And in all of these things that you've mentioned, I'm guessing you haven't watched our last few videos, because as it happens, we've touched on a bunch of that stuff in like the last 4 or 5 videos.
Yeah, so maybe that might be of interest to you.
But we're only interested in one thing, which is, are you awake? That's all we're interested in. That's all we care about. Are you awake? you can have all of the powers in the world. You can have all of the secret societies. You can have all of the special handshakes. You can have the secret sign and the Mason's word and all of that kind of stuff. But if you ain't awake, it don't mean squat. So that's what we're interested in. Are you awake or are you asleep in any moment? And when I say you, I actually mean me. Nor means nor. Am I awake? Am I awake now as I speak to you? Am I speaking to you from a state of awakeness or from a state of absence? That's what we're all about. Everything that we do leads from that one question. So I've tried supernatural powers. Supernatural powers are like having a 1950s Harley Davidson motorcycle. You have to repair them right out of the box. And you have to keep repairing them. You take it out for a drive, you come back, you have to repair it. It's too much work. I'd rather walk.
Yeah. We always
So-
talk about avoiding just being distracted by the shiny objects.
Yeah.
Case in point, yeah. Speaking of shiny objects, James asks, do we get decoder rings? I mean, it's just kind of a DIY situation.
You were talking about handshakes and secret societies and da. So decoder rings.
Yes. All right. Yeah, Steve, we'll definitely get back to you on books that might be relevant to you. So, no problem. Okay. Anyways, where were we? We were talking about, well, one thing we were talking about is it important to know or even to really hold on to an idea that there is something to be, to check the boxes and get the street cred that comes with being at the level of Fanaa, for example. I mean, part of what happens is as you move through these states, you have less and less of a shit about these things, to be perfectly honest with you. James.
I know from past experience, trying to measure my progress on a set of levels drives me nuts and makes me feel like shit. Any real practice I've ever ended up doing has just been a response to some intuition, to something deeper. It's not me trying to become an adept or whatever. So I have experiences. They make me question myself. I lose those experiences and go back to my robotic self. But that's the work. My work motivation is just I always feel like it's in a response to something deeper that's beyond me. It's not something I've accomplished. And other people's conditions is not relevant to me. I don't mean that in a dismissive or elitist sense. It's just
Right.
I'm not answerable. I may not even have a good perception of where they're really coming from. And I'm not relying on the enlightened to save the planet. That's the job of, scientists and politicians and da. I mean, the more aware people, great, fantastic. But my motivation is, to the extent that I have a healthy motivation, that's it. It's just dealing with my experience. I was sort of harkening back to something we said a bit earlier in that respect. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does, and it makes me think also of I think it was in a private session within the past few days. Someone said, "I want to be awake for myself and for the people who I care about, for the people close to me."
Yeah.
So.
And as we're sitting here, I'm designing a decoder ring for us.
Good.
It will have the code on one band and nothing on the other.
All right, so I did see M unmuted. I would love to hear from you, M, and then we'll check with Mr. Keem, and then we'll continue.
I think I wanted to say to the question Mustaqim had, it feels to me with this set of Fana the other set of Fana, the other set of, Fana fil Rasul, Fana fil Sheikh, all that, is an outward kind of a Fana, an outward kind of an annihilation, whereas this is an inward, this is the real deal kind of annihilation, like it's an inward thing. So when you drop the judgment, when you drop the actions, when you drop the attributes, when you drop the essence, who's there to ask, am I lonely? Have I done it? Am I there yet? All of that drops alongside with the judgment, with the action, with the attributes, and the essence is just in its isness. And it speaks for itself, I guess. And I think internally we would know when we don't have those questions left in us and we're just being, and we're in that isness, and that's enough. That is actually enough. That is the deal. And thank you, Mushtaq, when you told the other four and this four, it just made so much more sense. And I think when we turn inward and look at ourselves, we'll see that we've had the states in and out, here and there all the time. But like you said, it's holding that station. And I would say grace does that. I don't think we...
Yes.
That's an excellent.
There is always an element of grace.
Yeah.
For sure.
And as we know through studying the Enneagram process, for example, grace has to enter in. It's not optional. It is part of the process. It is part of the holistic conclusion of a process to have grace come into play. So, Mr. King.
And Steve, wait a second. Let's
I
get
know,
Steve's question first.
Okay, I know that
Yeah.
Mr. King was unmuted though, so.
Yeah.
Oh no, please speak to Mustaqim's question first, because you mentioned.
All
him
right.
first. Yep.
Mustaqim, go for it.
Yeah, I think I continue with my previous question. The idea is to know where I am at the Fana state is I think more in the process of know if I do the right thing and am I going in the right way or right direction. Because if I don't know where I am, then maybe I'm wasting my time or energy on some practice that not work for me. Or yeah, I think that's the idea of knowing where I am.
And you make a good point. I think that is, I would say that's part of the role of the teacher, the guide, to kind of keep tabs on you and feel out where you're at and how you're doing. And, you figure it out through discussion and observing and working together so that you don't have to focus so much on what have I achieved so much as am I doing what's working for me right now. It's kind of like, again, I guess I'm going to bring up the Enneagram. You have the circle, and then you have the bee in the center of the circle who's watching all the happenings on the outside and seeing how they connect together. Whereas for you, the focus is on, okay, what's in front of me? So that you don't get too distracted by these future achievements and such. Yeah, M mentions that's where teaching community comes in. So that's my 2 cents, but Mushtaq, what do you think?
I think your 2 cents are good enough.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think to continue with that question is this Fana state is like I know the state and station is just state permanent, or is that came and go? Like,
A state is never permanent. A station is permanent.
This Fana state or
These Fanas will be both states and stations. I mean, you can have any of these Fana at any time as a state. You move into it for a moment, your personality is laid in abeyance, you're experiencing what is as an awake presence to reality, and then you fall back asleep. That's the state. The station is when you experience that and you stay awake. That when that becomes your new normal, it's a station.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And this is problematic, by the way, because a lot of so-called spiritual teachers, in my experience, can produce states really, really well. It's like,
And
boom, I'm all excited. Wow,
Yeah, you-
psychedelic. Somebody slipped me the brown acid. Any of that stuff. But
you walk away thinking you've achieved something. Like,
yeah,
this
when
is
it,
my new
with a state,
normal.
you've achieved nothing other than an experience. With a station, you achieve something, and that takes real work. And nobody can do that work for you but you.
Yes. But it's one of those achievements that you, guess in a way, not that it's all enjoyable, but you savor it through the process rather than through the quote unquote achieving it. So I just want to add in a quick chat comment from James, and then Steve had a question, and then Hind is unmuted. So James said,
Yeah.
I'm only quote unquote lonely when I'm identifying with my dramatic story. And he's defining stories and scripts as, perhaps when he needs to find his house keys, not encapsulating the real. Yeah. Thanks, James. So, Steve, did you have a question that wasn't answered yet?
So again, forgive my ignorance. I'm obviously extremely, extremely new here. Um, so,
I think you may have frozen.
nope.
Oh.
So I was just thinking about interconnections, but I'm trying to distill things to use the alchemical term. Let's distill it up. And forgive my ignorance here, but I know there are various Sufi orders or movements or what have you, with various peers, PIR peer. And does one particular order teach the path of Fana much more pronouncedly than another one would, per se?
No. To understand Sufi orders, you can't think of them like Christian denominations or anything like that. Think of it more like trade schools. One order teaches you shoemaking. Another order teaches you carpentry. Another order teaches you how to catch fish. But they're all trades. And each order has different ways of doing things, which are suitable for a different kind of personality.
And is it
So-
the sheikh's responsibility to ascertain that personality and state you're best for this, you're best for that, you're best for this, etc.? Perhaps.
Yeah, or at least to know when somebody is theirs or not. My teacher used to have hundreds of people come to him and say, I want to be your student. And he would frequently say to many of them, but you don't belong to us. You're welcome to stay here until you find your right place. And we will treat you as if you were one of ours, but you're not one of ours. And then most of those people would eventually find the place that they should be.
And also in the Sufic view, and forgive my ignorance, but I am ignorant, is it similar to the Vedantic, or I should say Upanishadic view of God being like Brahman or like Para Brahman, or is God Allah and then perhaps prior to Allah, and pure awareness that doesn't even need a name or a title per se? Or
Allah is the name of the divine reality that encompasses all of the attributes. There is also the name of the divine reality that encompasses the essence. The best way to describe that, say it in Arabic first. It's Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qul hu Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yalad wa lam yakun lahu kufuwan ahad. Which in English is, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Say, He, God, is one, indivisible, the self-subsistent thing that does not rely on anything else for its subsistence. He is not born, nor does he give birth. He's one. That's our view of the divine reality in its most fundamental term. We are, in some ways, more related to the Advaitists than to the Upanishadists. But that gets into a whole nother can of worms there.
Yeah. And again, he is a placeholder term because in this tradition, in Islam generally, God is not seen as having a gender. It's just a grammatical word. Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole thing. Yeah. All right, so Hind had a question. She asked, is self-observation part of the work to make a state a station? Yes, right?
Yeah, in general, yes.
Right, exactly.
Self-remembering is more so. Self-witnessing is even more so than that. But yeah.
I mean, they're all going to play inevitably. They're going to be part of this. But it's, as you say, it's even more than that. Like all three of them will go into helping you bend into your Fanaa. Does that help answer your question, Hin? Okay, great. Awesome. Is there anything else to add, Mushtaq? Did you have more thoughts to share?
God, there's so much.
Oh.
Thanks, Noor. I'm looking at it now from the lens of psychotherapy, psychology, and the Fana fil ahkam, the afal, the sifat, the zat, all of them seems to be like the persona self, the self that we've created from all the conditioning, the mechanical self, but they're seen as personas, and it's our, I guess, our outward face to the world and to ourselves when we start to believe that that's who we are. And this four-tier journey gives us an opportunity to kind of phase out from that persona self, to see it for what it really is, and to, like taking the cream out of the milk, like to actually separate from it and allow it to dissolve, the persona to dissolve, leaving you in your pure state and hopefully station. But the persona, looking at it from this perspective just makes so much sense for my, to be able to work with it, like say in a teaching situation or a client therapist situation. There's substance there to be able to work with.
Which is probably much more applicable for you in your work than the other 4-part framework.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because you don't want anybody like annihilating into you as the therapist. Like
No,
Absolutely.
and that happens.
it does. That's
Yeah,
my
transference
point. Like,
happens all the
yeah.
time in therapy. Yeah.
And there can be benefits to that, I suppose, as a transitional phase, but as a whole, it's a difficult framework to work with as a therapist, I imagine.
And it fits in well with the attachment theories as well. Like even the other one, like there's attachment there to your sheikh, to your teacher, to your, to your prophet, messenger, to your God. And they're all made up in your mind when you're in that mechanical state. I mean, even
Yes.
God is an idol in your head. Call it Allah, call it whatever you want to call it. It's still an idol in your head if it's what you've created in order to hold on to. And you have to say La ilah, like there is no God, before you can actually come to God.
Break the idol.
Yeah,
see
to
the
break
real.
that
Yeah.
idol that's in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did a talk about that a long time ago about what idols really are.
Yeah.
Because idols aren't some piece of rock carved to look like a chicken or something.
Exactly.
Idols are, yeah,
Exactly.
idols are the things that we carry with us and worship on the inside.
Yeah. And sometimes even just our ideas are idols. Sometimes they have to also break down and be smashed.
Yes. Absolutely. So we'll make sure that we put that video at the end of this one for people.
If I can find it, yeah.
Yeah. Jem says power and money are the idols of our times. Yeah. Aesthetics, all of that.
Yeah. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
And selfies.
And selfies. So to kind of put a cap on this, if we look at the first of the 4 Fanas, this would be a transitional human, somebody who is moving away from the conditioned life to the non-conditioned life. The second of them is to become integrated. So the integrated human begins to create the point of awareness that can gaze upon the reality. The third is the conscious human, somebody who can hold that state of awakeness. And the fourth is the completed or the perfected human. Hopefully that will make some sense. And this is the work. I'm pretty sure that Gurdjieff stole that term from the Arabic word amal, which means work or deed or taking action. And to be awake and to be awake to the divine reality is the best of deeds. And that's the work.
Is that like AMAL? Amal?
AMAL, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely evidence of a sense of continuity to this. And I think this, I think it was Steve who was asking about that, and there appears to be the signs of that kind of continuity between the work of the Sufis and the work of what came to be Gurdjieff's work in
Yep.
more recent times. But we have to remember as
Yeah,
well
I
that
like there's
Sufi
a
work continues into the now.
yeah. There was a Sufi sheikh in Turkey who passed away some years ago. He was a great scholar, and he said, "Yeah, Gurdjieff just came in and stole a bunch of this stuff from it and ran off with it. Didn't know how to use most of it," which may or may not be true.
We will take advantage.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah, because people understand his language, and his language talks about what we talk about. So we're going to steal it back. We're going to file off the serial numbers. We're going to give it a new paint job and call it ours.
Yeah. Jem.
So I was thinking a little bit of the four Fanas that in the beginning of the Fana fil Sheikh and the Fana fil Pir and Rasul and Fillah, and how it fits in actually. I think it depends on the state that you are, which road you have to follow, of course, makes sense. But let's say, for example, you're born in a society where there's no good example for you to become a conscious human being, then you need an example. And this example can be by glorifying a certain sheikh, because you will take over as, like one of the hadiths say, be around those people who you want to become like. And this sheikh, for example, is then that person. And then when that state has been reached, of course, then you find a peer, then you go to the Rasul, because he is the Habib, he is the beloved one of Allah. So he is the one and only true example to be lived like. But yes, that's it actually.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's not a valid path for some people. It never worked for me. And one of the reasons that it never worked for me is I never met a sheikh who wasn't full of shit at some level. And this includes my own beloved teachers. And so if I'm going to hold them up as perfect, they would actually have to be perfect.
Exactly, yes.
And I can tell you that I would never meet that standard even for myself. And I think well of myself, but I'm not going to buy into the idea that I'm perfect. And
no matter which sheikh I've heard speak on YouTube or wherever or whatever, or which book I've even read before, there is always a slight tendency to be judgmental. But whatever topic it might be, there's always a slight nudge to being judgmental, and this does not fit into in the unconditional being of love, which Sufism or Islam is actually, or religion or the universe wants to portray into life. So how can you idolize something that is actually promoting some kind of division or judgmentalness in principle? And but you have
yeah,
to be
it's a problem. And I can speak for myself in saying I have been known to be judgmental from time to time. I know it's hard to believe, but it has been. Stop laughing, Noor.
I know. Sorry.
And see, that's the thing. Humans are by definition not reliable. God, on the other hand, is reliable. So that's where your attention needs to go. And I prefer this model because nobody's attention needs to be on me. Because I don't think I could stand living up to that kind of being held in that kind of ideal. I like having warts.
I mean, they can be a teaching tool in their own right.
Yeah. So this is, as I said, this is not the most common model. It is mostly found amongst certain dervish orders in Turkey and Turkestan. When I say Turkestan, I don't mean what they call Turkestan now. I mean the giant swath of the steppes that runs from Turkey all the way to Chinese Turkestan. with the centerpieces being Bukhara and Samarkand. And that's where this comes from. So northern Iran and the Turkic-speaking regions of Central Asia.
Yeah, sometimes this is framed as, you know, the northern style Sufis compared to the southern style Sufis. And as I understand it, our preferred framework tends to be related to the various orders of the north, which is, as Mushtaq described, Turkestan and all that stuff. And then this more, dedication to the Sheikh and all of that stuff, that tends to be more of a southern Sufi thing. So places south of Turkestan tend to depend on that other framework that we described earlier that involves the Sheikh, the Pir, Rasul, Prophet, and Allah, annihilation into all of those constructs.
Yeah. Which is not to say that we aren't totally down with the Prophet and the Pirs and
Right.
all like that. We dig the Prophet. He's a groovy guy. He's one of my favorite people.
But as we wrote in our description, it's a different emphasis. It's a different nuance-oriented focus.
Yeah. Did you guys know that the Prophet Muhammad was historically the very first advocate of universal literacy? Yeah, for reals. Anyway, so
Anyways.
questions. It's question time for
Yeah.
anybody who has questions.
Mr. Keem.
No, it's not question. Just was thinking about the instance where the Fanafise or Fanafir might comes when the Sufis doing the group zikr. Sometimes they say connect your heart with the say or with the peer, because because at that group zikr, I don't think somebody will just try to sound their own voice or zikr, not in harmony with the groups.
Yeah, and that's an appropriate place for this. There is an exercise called the present moment zikr, which is part of our tradition, which is done with verbal zikr in a group. Yeah, if we ever get a group of people together, we'll do that.
Yeah. And Mr. Keem, I guess I would think of it in that context as like acknowledging the presence of, the ones who came before in one's tariqah and of the Prophet, and just kind of acknowledging their, well, again, I'm repeating myself, but their presence and allowing that to enrich the experience of the zikr at large.
Yeah. And when you do zikr, one of the first things you do, at least in our tradition, is you ask permission, call it dastur. And you ask permission from God, from the Prophet, from the Prophet's family, from the peers, from the sheikhs, and from the pole of the world and the person whose job it is to take care of the place. I'm not sure exactly how to translate that. In you say Sahib al-Medan, the Amina, can you translate that?
Yeah, the Sahib al Maidan, the owner of the now, of the time, of the space, the owner of Sahib al Mekan, owner of the place.
Yeah, it's
So
hard to get into English though, isn't it?
it's really hard to put it into the English, but the Sahib al is the owner of. So if you're coming in together as a group to do a sikir, the owner of that, allowing that space, you take that, you connect to that one.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
gratitude for the
you
use of the space.
ask, yeah, you ask permission from everybody from the top down, and you make connection with everybody from the bottom up. And then you do your zikr.
I don't know if this has got anything to do with it, but you know that English saying of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater?
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes when we take one particular method, it doesn't mean the other methods are wrong or that there's no place for them. It's
Yeah,
all
you're absolutely correct.
it's all interconnected and integrated, and it's and maybe the hikmah, the wisdom is in knowing how to, when to use what and how, and integrate it into our lives where it's authentic and integral, rather than yeah. So another thing that keeps coming up to my heart, I feel I have to share, is how in the time of our Prophet, the Sahaba who were Fana fil Rasul, obviously they'd lost their, but they weren't, because they would, at times when he'd command something, they'd say, is this Rasulullah speaking, or is this the son of Abdullah? Like, is it Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, talking, or is it Rasulullah talking? And depending on how he'd answer it, they'll obey or not obey. They'd say, well, no, I have a better idea on this. I have a better understanding of this. If it was but if it was coming from the Risalat, the messengership order, then they'll say, Amen, no, you know best. But so again, that annihilation, the word annihilation might not be being translated in its full, that Fana is not fully understood. It doesn't mean that we lose our everything and become robots of somebody else, whether they're a teacher or a peer or whoever. But it means we're placing a trust in them, walking alongside with them until you overcome that one, and you can, because the road is endless and everyone's potential is, you know, all the way to Hu and beyond, if that's what Allah wants. I don't know. I think I'm going a bit off the track. Yeah.
I think it's lovely though. And for those who don't know, Hu is kind of like, it's a way of referring to the one, to God. So thank you, Amina. Lovely. I just want to make sure that we checked in with everyone before we part ways. Ilmar, how are you doing with this? Any thoughts?
I'm doing fine. I found this quite as an interesting talk. I guess I don't know if it's a question I have. One thing I'm curious about is, I mean, these stages sound like, stages, of human development. I mean, you label the last one the perfected human, and I guess I'm wondering, is that really an end point, or is, I mean, I'm trying to contrast this, for example, in the Zen traditions, the Oxherding pictures, right? I mean, you get to the top of the mountain, which sounds like kind of maybe that's equivalent or points to the same place where this perfected human place, but then you come back to the marketplace, right? And I'm wondering where that fits in with this particular way of characterizing things.
That's why I prefer to use the term completed human. I don't know who this person is. They're coming in at the end rather than the beginning.
It's a familiar name, but
yeah. But I think of it in terms of martial arts. If you join, say, a Taekwondo dojo or a karate dojo, you have all of these belts that you go through, and they're all pretty colors. The more colors, the better sometimes. So, with Taekwondo, you have like 20 different levels before you get to black belt or something like that. And then you get through all of this work and you get your first black belt. And that's like reaching the completed human. What the first black belt means is that you are now ready to learn. You've done the basics and you're ready to learn now, not that you have completed anything. And so that's how I think of the completed human is you just got your first degree black belt. Now you can learn. Now you're in a position where you can really do something. As Mr. Gurdjieff says, you are a man without quotes, or a woman without quotes, or undifferentiated human being of unknown gender without quotes. Who knows?
There we go.
Yeah.
So in terms of the annihilation metaphor or the dropping off, whatever that is, I mean, is there something further at that point that one is dropping off or annihilating?
Yes, they say after Fana is baqa, which means self-subsistence or subsistence in. So the journey starts there. It's the journey to Allah, then the journey in Allah, then the journey with Allah. That's the baqa, to put it in its traditional form, where your existence is there because God remembers you.
Okay. And at some point you'll expound on those, I assume.
Yeah, I've even mentioned it before, but we always come back down and around to this stuff.
Yeah. So James says, completed, quote unquote, completed is open to true learning, free of mechanical agenda.
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah. And those were great questions, Omar. Thank you.
Yeah, as always, we expect that from you, Omar.
Alka, how are you doing?
I'm good. I love the way people are able to articulate their feelings so well over here. I feel like I just feel them, and then I get overwhelmed with my feelings and get all worked up, and I can't articulate it correctly. But there's one thing that I've noticed in all the lectures that I have either listened or, attended. When people are talking about topics that is not relevant to what is being discussed at present, I get worked up when I'm sitting over here. I'm like, why are we talking about? But like, I want to listen to this Fanaa. I have I have noticed that teachers don't get worked up about it. They very casually talk about it. I mean, how do you do it? Like
you surrender to what is.
And at times there's an opening to tie it to the big picture too.
Yeah. But at least we don't have to be mean to somebody who needs to talk about their own agenda. We allow that.
Yeah. Sure.
It goes back to that whole loving kindness thing.
Yeah. Doing our best to practice.
At the wrong time, so I missed it all. The main topics I missed. I am so sorry. I thought I had the do not disturb, but somehow I got the call. Sorry, what was being said? I'm so sorry. Can you please repeat?
What did I say? I said something incredibly profound, and it wasn't from me, it was through me.
Well,
so
we were talking about practicing loving kindness.
Yeah, loving kindness. Making everything be as it, allowing everything to be as it is.
Yeah. And I mentioned
generally not being mean to people.
Yes, not being mean to people, and perhaps finding a window to tie it to the overall topic of discussion. But if not, then yeah, it's all
Yeah.
good. So,
And
Thank
not
you.
being
I'm
egotistical.
yeah.
Not
I
being
think it's
egotistical is very important. Going, oh, what I have to say is so important. I can't let anybody say anything else, but they must listen to me. That's egotistical. Somebody might have something useful to say. Some of our best conversations have come from people having useful things to say.
Yeah, like Eminem today. I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly. I just want to know, is she coming to Sweden? I really
We,
want
It
her
is
to.
in discussion. It is in
yeah,
discussion.
we would kidnap her and bring her to Sweden if we could.
Please, please.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Saka. Yeah, Cherie, how are you hanging in there? What are your thoughts?
I've got nothing to add. It's too hot here.
Oh no!
Nearly 100.
Cooking!
Literally nearly 100 right now. It's
Yikes.
Yeah.
You mean 100C or 100F?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did a conversion there. Whew, we're nearly there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unbelievably hot. Unbelievably hot.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I'm with you. We're just staying inside. I even cancelled my tennis lesson. That's how
Oh,
hot it is.
That's how hot it
Yikes.
is. I know how dedicated you are, so that's a big deal.
Well, it's smart because here you're hanging out with the cool kids.
Yeah, and this is a really cool talk because yes, I'm just letting this one unfold, and the annihilation of the egoic attributes, I think that was sensational. That really hit me, and I thought, keep working, keep letting things unfold as they should. No forcing, it will happen when it happens. And the recognition is actually part of my learning, the recognition of that. And the more I listen and just sit still while you guys are asking the questions, you're asking the questions that are formulating in my mind, but I don't have the terminology that you can automatically drop into. So it's a good thing to just sit still for this one.
Glad you're here for it, though, Cherie. Thank you. Yeah. James.
I just want to add, in the brief glimpses I've had, the egoic attributes were shown to be laughably needless, as this sort of the superabundance of reality came briefly clear to me. And I could look back at my personality, it was like a joke. My personality, or whatever, the egoic attributes were like this needless self-defeating compensation device for what the real could always provide unconditionally. Yeah, that's all I want to say. So to the extent I glimpsed or touched on any kind of annihilation, it was just the annihilation of an illusion, of a needless joke of an illusion. But then I sort of fell back into it all anyhow. But there you go. That's all I want to add to that.
The tastes help, though.
Yeah.
The tastes give us a sense of, what we're moving towards, even if we're not super gung-ho. Damn it, I gotta get there, in a way that trips us up.
And the second taste I had also helped with my circumstances at the time. I was a carer for my elderly parents, and it gave me a bit of a rejuvenation to get through the next month or so. So it had real-time consequence. But in both the tastes I had, the egoic attributes were seemed to be futile to the point of being laughable. That's the best way I can think of it.
Makes
there you go.
Sense. Yeah. Thanks, James. Hind, I know we got you in the chat, but how are you doing with this? What are you thinking?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. Yes, what I have like I just want to see if it's that correct. We have the 4 stages, the Fana fi Sheikh, Fana fi here, yes, and then Fana. Yeah. I have like for me, it's like I know this is a Sufi way, but can we say that's the first and the second, the Fana fi Sheikh? It's like when someone has a mentor, and he do, you know, and with that it began the work on the egoic self, you know, the things that we do mechanically, and then we try to do what the mentor says. So we pass the first and the second, and then we have the Fanaa fi Rasul, which is like an idol or a model, and we try to be like him. And that leads us to the Fanaa fillah, which is like, it can be the universal being.
Yeah, you can say that. My experience of it is a little bit different. What we were taught is that you make rabita with your sheikh. Do you know that term?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and he would make it back. I know my teacher, every evening he would sit down and he would make rabita with each of his marids and make dua for them.
It's almost like meditating from your heart.
Yeah.
On
Yeah. And one, if one needed a little extra energy or that sort of thing, or needed some focus or some help, the thing is, you can make rabita with anything. You can make rabita with a rock or a tree or a bird or a mountain lion. But when you do it with your teacher, it has a certain quality to it. But that's different than seeking annihilation in the teacher.
seeking to
If
disappear into them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I think you may be completely correct on this. If we're, it sounds like we're kind of talking the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I have nothing left to add. How about you?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah, sorry. And yes, you are always welcome. All right, shall we go to Brady Bunch mode?
Let's go to Brady Bunch mode. I'm hungry.
And I'm fading. All right,
Yes.
everyone. It's been so lovely to hang out with you all. Thank you for inspiring this talk. And yeah, we can wave to each other, wave to everybody watching on the replay, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.